Namaste. I and you make mention. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, translated by James Haughton Woods. For one who ponders upon the existence of the self, for him, after his instruction in the 8 aids to yoga, if he follows the instructions up and practice yoga as a result of that following and practicing, and after he sees the difference between the self and the sattva of the mind stuff, there comes a cessation of pondering upon the being of the self. For one who does not ponder at all upon the existence of the self, the heretic, for him, incompetent to receive the instruction and failing to make out the existence of the self, in this are the other world. There is no instruction, no seeing of the distinction, no cessation of pondering upon the existence of the self. Since such is the meaning of the sutra, an objector asks, how may we conclude that there is in the mind stuff a pondering upon the states of the self? In reply to this he says, in the range, just so. It is inferred that there has been performed in a previous existence a karma which is following up of the 8 aids to yoga, or a part of them, which is the seed of the sight of the thing as it is, tattva, and which is conducive to release. In such a person, unavoidably, the pondering upon the states of the self naturally goes on, even when there is no practice in concentration upon the thing. He shows who these persons are, according to the statements of the traditionalists, are not competent by saying, when there is none of this, yasya, good karma, this. The opposing view is that there is no fruition of karma, because there is no one in any of the other worlds. Since no other world exists, there are those who, having a liking for this doctrine, and no liking for the demonstrated truth of the 5 and 20 entities, the pondering upon one's own states of being has already, see Book 2, 39, has been explained. He refers to the man who sees the distinction by saying, since it is this mind stuff. For him who is skillful in the sight of distinction, pondering upon his own states of being ceases. Now, you reach a stage in the practice where things become automatic, or they become easy. And that's what you're trying to when they're difficult, right? 26. Then the mind stuff is borne down to discrimination, onward towards isolation. That mind stuff of his, which formerly was borne onward towards objects of sense, down to non-thinking, becomes changed for him. It is borne onward towards isolation, down to the thinking which comes from discrimination. Now to the question, what kind of mind stuff has the man who sees the distinction? He replies, 26. Then the mind stuff is borne down to discrimination, onward towards isolation. This is explained by merely reading. Well, a lot of things would have seemed like would have needed less comment, but 27. In the intervals of this mind stuff, there are other presented ideas coming from the subliminal impressions. The mind stuff, which is borne down towards discrimination of the presented idea, and the flow of which is towards nothing but discernment of the difference between the sattva and the self, has its intervals, other presented ideas. Either it is I, or it is mine, or I think, or I do not think. From what source? From the dwindling seeds, from previous subliminal impressions. An objector says, this may be so, but the sight of the distinction has its final goal, nistha, the discrimination, then the mind stuff would at no time be emergent. Whereas we see that the mind stuff, a one who goes the rounds for alms is emergent. To which the reply is this, 27. In the intervals of this, there are other presented ideas from subliminal impressions. A presented idea is that by which a thing is presented to the self. It is the sattva of the mind stuff. From this sattva, the intelligence is discriminated. By this, it is borne down to discrimination. By the words, I think, liberation is plainly indicated as distinct from infatuation. By the words, I do not think, infatuation is plainly shown. By the words, it is I, or the words, it is mine, the sense of personality, ahamkara, and the sense of property, mamakara, which are the sources of infatuation, are indicated. The compound gzi yaman abija is to be analyzed as meaning seeds which are dwindling. The words from previous subliminal impressions means from subliminal impressions of emergence. 28. The escape from these subliminal impressions is described as being like the escape from the hindrances. The hindrances, when in the condition of burned seed, are unfit for generation. Just so a previous subliminal impression, when in the condition of seed burned by the fire of intuitive thinking, does not generate presented ideas, but because the subliminal impressions of intuitive knowledge are dormant until the task of the mind stuff is completed, they are not considered here. This might be granted, the objector says, but even if there be discriminative thinking, supposing the subliminal impressions of emergence generate other presented ideas, what means is there then for the escaping them, to the end that they in turn shall not generate other presented ideas? In reply to this he says, 28, the escape from these is described as being like the hindrances. In the case of one whose discriminative thinking is not thoroughly mature, the subliminal impressions of emergence, not having dwindled away, generate other presented ideas. Whereas, in the case of one in whom discriminative thinking is mature, the subliminal impressions have dwindled and are not capable of generating other presented ideas, just as the hindrances, although arising in the intervals of the discrimination, do not generate other subliminal impressions. Why is this so? Because in that case these hindrances are in the condition of seeds burnt by the fire of discriminative thinking. Similarly, also the subliminal impressions of emergence. Now these subliminal impressions of emergence must be restricted by the subliminal impressions of discriminative thinking, and the subliminal impressions of discrimination by subliminal impressions of restriction. But as for the subliminal impressions of restriction, we have shown that they are outwardly objectless. The means of restriction must in all cases be considered, but not the subliminal impressions of intuitive knowledge. As he says, of intuitive knowledge, he refers to the subliminal impressions of the higher passionlessness. And an important thing that we should consider is the making taboo upon oneself. How are we controlling ourselves? Are we doing it in a way that is wrong or preventing us from good? Are we wasting our time to distract ourselves from what may be worse, possibly letting programming sneak in? 29. For one who is not usurious, even in respect of elevation, there follows, in every case, as a result of discriminative discernment, the concentration called rain cloud of knowable things. This Brahman, even in respect of elevation, is not usurious. That is to say, is not looking for anything as a reward, even from that tatupe, and if in respect of that he be passionless, in every case, nothing less than discernment becomes his. In this way, when he because the seeds of the subliminal impressions have perished, there do not spring up for him any more presented ideas, then the concentration called rain cloud of noble things becomes his. So the author of the sutra, after describing the elevation, prasamkhyana, as the means for the restriction of the emergence, gives the means for the restriction of the elevation itself. And let's remember to do deeds. Let not our deeds be hindered by, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? If it's what you should be doing, do it. 29. For one who is not usurious, even in respect of elevation. For one is not usurious, even in respect of elevation, there follows in every case, as a result of discriminative discernment, the concentration, rain cloud of things. This Brahman looks for nothing. For example, dominion over things, even from that, means even from elevation. When on the contrary, he is hindered even in respect of that, and is disaffected towards it, because he sees the defects of his mutability. In every case, nothing less than discriminative discernment becomes his. This same he explains in the words, even in respect of that. Wherever presented ideas of emergence may arise, then this Brahman has not attained to discriminative discernment at all times. After he has no other presented ideas, he has at all times attained to discriminative discernment, and the concentration, called the rain cloud of noble things, becomes his. What he means to say is this: when he becomes disaffected towards elevation and longs for its restriction, he should devote himself to the concentration called the rain cloud of noble things, and by thus devoting himself to the rain cloud of noble things, he attains to discriminative discernment at all times, and thus he is capable of making it restricted. And remember, the class system is very much a chosen thing, and in terms of one's choice, one can be of the priestly class because of your spiritual practices that you've taken on, much less than some birth. Of the ruling class, you can be self-ruling. You can, take domain with what you're capable. There's the merchants and the servants class, and your typical person would not your typical person, but it isn't too hard to take part in some of each of that, right? And by being of the priestly class, you don't have to be a paid clergy. Oh, do this ritual, here's money. I'll do research, I'll do number symbolism and stuff like that, but I'm not going to be a soothsayer, and you're not paying me for messages from the divine, you're not paying me to pray or do rituals. I will never accept a salary for that one. 30. Then follows the cessation of the hindrances and of karma. After the attainment of the rain cloud of noble things, undifferentiated consciousness, avidya, and other hindrances are extirpated, root and branch. and the latent deposits of karma, good and bad, are destroyed with the roots. Upon the cessation of the hindrances and of karma, the wise man, even while yet alive, is released. Why is this? Because misconception is the cause of the world. Bhavasya. For surely no one has ever seen the birth of anyone whose misconceptions have dwindled away. And he tells what the purpose of this is. 30. Then follows the cessation of the hindrances and of karma. Karma being cause, effect, action, what's done. But why does he become liberated even while living? The answer is in the word because, for verily the latent deposit of karma, kindled by subconscious impressions of hindrances and of karma, is the source of birth and other fruitions. And when there is no source, there can be nothing following from the source, as on this point the exalted Aksapada says, because we see that persons free from passion have no birth. So 31. Then because of the endless of knowledge from which all obscuring defilements have passed away, what is yet to be known amounts to little. The knowledge which is freed from all obscurations by hindrances and by karma becomes endless. The sattva of the obscured knowledge, overwhelmed by the tamas which obscures it and kept in motion here and there only by the rajas, is set free from the tamas and becomes fit for the process of knowing. In this case, when it has become rid of a defilement by any of the defilements of the covering, it becomes endless. In consequence of the endless of knowledge, what is yet to be known amounts to little, to no more than a firefly in the sky. On which point this has been said, a blind man pierced a jewel. One without fingers strung it on a cord. One without a neck put it on. A dumb man paid honor to it. Now, what kind of mind stuff is there, when thus there is the rain cloud of noble things? The reply is this. 31. Then because of the endlessness of knowledge, from which all obscuring defilements have passed away, what is yet to be known amounts to little. You know, after you tear off the first few veils of illusion, it sort of kind of gets easier and easier, or it can get so easy that it's like, I've taken off 10, another 1,000's not going to make a difference. Well, another 1,000 will make a difference, but it's like, yeah, well, the hardest ones were the first few on the path sometimes for people. The obscurations are those things by which the sattva of the mind stuff is obscured. The defilements are the hindrances and the karma, the compound to be analyzed into all and obscuring defilements. All these obscuring defilements have passed away from the sattva of the mind stuff. Knowledge is that by which we know. This is the derivation. This is the derivation. Because of the endlessness, by reason of its immeasurability, what is yet to be known amounts to very little. Just as in the autumn, when the rays of the moon are freed from a dense veil of cloud, and when they are brilliant in all directions, the light is so endless that the water jars and other things which are to be lightened up amount to very little. Similarly, owing to the endlessness of light from the sattva of the mind stuff, from which all rajas and tamas have passed away, the things to be lightened up amount to little. This same he says in the words from all. He makes this clear from the negative side by the words overwhelmed by the tamas which obscures it, kept in motion by the rajas whose disposition is to activity, and hence set free because the tamas is removed from the spot. This is the meaning. Hence because by its light it rains. That It pours down all kinds of noble things. It is called the rain cloud of noble things. The objector says we may admit the existence of this rain cloud of noble things, the concentration which is the cause of the subsidence of the hindrances, with their subconscious impressions, and of the latent deposit of karma. But when this concentration exists, why should a creature not be reborn? In reply to this, he says, on which point this has been said, if an effect is to take place even when the cause is totally uprooted, then, woo, sir! Piercing of jewels by blind men and similar performances would take place before our eyes, and so this proverb, popular with reference to any inexplicable thing, would be explicable. A blind man pierced a jewel. He strung it, that is, put it on a thread. He put it on, that is, fastened it on. He paid honor to it, that is, spoke in praise of it. And one thing that we definitely have to possibly understand here is the when the 5 false egos, however you term that, are done away with, whatever's left to do seems so insurmountable, seems so little, because comparatively very few deal with these things. Pride, for example, is a key thing in my country. Self-delusion of various sorts. 32. When as a result of this, the aspects guna have fulfilled their purpose, so they attain to the limit of the sequence of mutations, as a result of the rise into consciousness of the rain cloud of noble things. When the aspects have fulfilled their purpose, they end the sequence of their mutations. For the aspects, having completed their experience and their liberation, and having attained the limit of their sequence, are incapable of lingering even for a moment. The objector says, the last limit of the rain cloud of noble things, the undisturbed calm of thought, the higher passionlessness may remove to their very roots the subliminal impressions of emergent concentration, the latent deposits of hindrances and of karma. Still, since the aspect of themselves are deposited to form evolved effects, why do they not, even in the case of such a self, produce a body and organs and the rest? The reply is this, 32. When as a result of this, the aspects have fulfilled their purpose, they attain to the limit of the sequence of mutations. The disposition of the aspects is such that when they have fulfilled their purpose with reference to any self, they do not continue active with reference to that self. This is the point. What now is the so-called sequence? 33. The positive correlation to the moment recognized as such as the final limit of the mutation is a sequence. A sequence has its essence. A sequence has as its essence a continuous series of moments, and is cognized as such at the final limit or termination of the mutation. For when a new garment has come to the end of its newness, there is no oldness unless the oldness has passed through the moments of the sequence. In permanent things, also it is evident that there is a sequence. There are, moreover, 2 kinds of permanences, the absolutely unchanging permanence and the permanence in mutation. Of these 2, the self's permanence is the absolutely unchanging, and the aspect's permanence is in mutation. A thing is permanent when its essence is not destroyed while it is passing through mutations. Both of these 2 kinds have a certain permanence because the essential nature of them is not destroyed. Of these two, with regard to the external aspects of the aspects guna, the thinking substance, and the others, for example, the sequence, having reached its end, is recognizable at the final limit of the mutation. With regard to permanent substances, that is, the aspects guna, the end has not been reached in regard to the absolutely unchanging permanent, the liberated selves, grounded in themselves and in nothing else. The being in themselves is experienced. To be sure, as a sequence, yet it has not reached its end, and is not recognizable at the final limit. The sequence is abstracted from the act of existence, and is based upon words only. Now this round of rebirths, as it exists in aspects guna, either in actual motion or in perpetual equilibrium, a final consummation of the sequence are not. See, we have, the round of rebirths is something we go through in life, that we're going through different states and stations, and our bodies are changing, and we naturally think about and even dream about things that we haven't done or aren't going to do, and this is incapable of final consummation. Oh, this is incapable of answer. How then? A question capable of answer is this: will everyone who is born die? Yes, sir. There is, however, a question capable of alternative answers. Will everyone, after he has died, be born again? The skillful man, upon whom discernment has dawned, and whose craving has dwindled, will not be born again, but any other will be born again. Likewise, in case this question should be raised, will the human race be more fortunate or not? A partial answer to this question is this: it will be more fortunate in comparison with animals. It will not be more fortunate in comparison with angels and sages. I presume they mean the devis, so angels. On the other hand, a question incapable of answer is this: will this round of rebirths have an end, or will it be endless? But in case there be a limitation of the question, neither one of two ways, so that there be a consummation of the series of the round of rebirth for the good man, but not for any other, then there is no defect in that question. Consequently, the only way is that this question be analyzed. And I guess this is where I'm going to break off here. Namaste. We make mention